What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel and another video. If you haven't watched the last video, go check it out. I'll link it. We basically took the entire drivetrain out of the 335 in the last video. So completely empty up here, motor sitting over here. Ton of maintenance to do. We have a lot of upgraded parts to put on it. So since we have so much to cover, keep the intro short. We're going to dive right into the parts that I have. I will show you guys all the parts, and then we are going to start by taking the transmission off and checking the clutch. So we'll go from right to left. Pure 600 turbos, OEM oil pan gasket, DKM Twin disc clutch. This is still an organic clutch, so it should drive relatively good, not be too harsh like a ceramic clutch would be. Comes with everything, both clutch plates, flywheel, throwout bearing, alignment tool, pretty much everything you need comes in the box. Next, we got a bunch of stuff, new water pump. I did order mine through FCP, so I will just send mine back in, and you know, lifetime warranty and all. This is a giant box of you know, oil filter housing gaskets, intake manifold gaskets, valve cover gaskets. Just a bunch of stuff in there we'll cover as we put it on the car. All new arms for the front end, all new boots, we'll do all that. This is a turbo install kit from ECS Tuning. And new axle nuts, vacuum tubing, differential service, power steering fluid. We do have a new power steering reservoir because there is a filter built into the power steering reservoir, and as far as I know, it's never been changed. So we'll do all that, service that, new thermostat, front main seal, I believe, or rear main. We're gonna do both. Oil filter, coolant, oil change, new NGK 2-step colder plugs. Front rear main seal, some ball joints. And we have a couple other things that aren't quite here yet. Transfer case mount. And then the other part that I have that I'll show when we put the motor in probably the next video, I'm gonna do a Turner coolant expansion tank. It's for the relocated tank. I had a lot of issues after I relocated the tank of it leaking. I don't know if it was cracked or what, but it looked fine, but it was just leaking. I didn't like how the hoses were run. So we're just gonna get their whole kit because I really like how, the fit and finish on that kit is amazing. It is a little expensive, but I think it'll be worth it in the long run just for straight reliability. Anyways, that's about all I have to talk about now. So let's just dive in and we'll pull the trans off and just start cleaning things up. Okay, we got the flywheel out, the clutch pressure plate, we got everything out. So here's our clutch. This is our actual clutch disc. It looks just fine, to be honest. Definitely seen some heat. The pads are worn, but still in pretty good shape. They're all worn evenly. There's no springs missing. Like, the clutch is still together just fine. This is the spec flywheel. There's one hot spot, but other than that, it wore super evenly, so I'm super impressed by that. And then the pressure plate looks fine, wore perfectly evenly, so this wore just fine. Probably still had some life left in it, but obviously if we're gonna be adding more power, we're gonna need a new clutch. And also here's our transfer case mount. It's shot completely. And then the flex disc, it looks okay, but it's a while you're in there item. So everything looks good, nothing alarming, nothing crazy, nothing's broken. But engine's looking good. We're ready to move on. Next step, I'm gonna pull that axle out, and then this axle actually broke on its way out. So I'll pull the cup out. Those are going off to get rebuilt, like I said. So it's just gonna be a lot of cleaning, and I think we'll do turbos next, take those off, and we'll go from there. Okay, little update. I'm a dummy. You can't take the turbos off without getting the subframe out of the way. I don't know why I thought that would work. You have to pull the subframe when you do this in the car anyways. So I thought that would work, but we got the downpipes disconnected. So the downpipes are kind of wedged between the engine mount and the subframe, and the outlets are gone. But other than that, we can't get to most of this without getting the subframe off and getting the motor in a better spot to do that. So I secured an engine crane, and we need to get this off the subframe. Once it's out of the car like this, it's pretty much the engine mount bolts right here are basically the only thing that hold it on both sides. And I think we have to disconnect the rack, but I'll double check. And then if you don't know, there's an engine lifting point. There's a hole right here, and your tow hook just threads in. So we got the tow hook in. I just need to set up the engine hoist, and then let's get these two separated, clean some stuff up, and we can finally get the turbos off the car. Okay, that took a little bit longer than I thought. Plans changed. So initially I wasn't going to put this on an engine stand. I had that iron block M20 back there on the engine stand. Didn't want to do that. I was just going to try and work with the crane. Wound up pulling that block off, swapping the engine crane to this thing. It is a Harbor Freight stand, so it's leaning quite bad, but it works. I do have access to the oil pan and the turbos and everything in the front now. And then there's our transmission brace, and our subframe. I wound up removing the power steering pump because it has to come off anyways for the oil pan. There's 3 E12 bolts that hold that on. Took that off, took the power steering reservoir off. Before we start on the turbos, which I know I've been saying we're gonna do, I really want to power wash that one. It's gonna rain all week. So I figured I'll do it now, and it's really dirty, so I want to see what it looks like clean. So I'll show you some before shots of how crusty the subframe and transmission are, and then we'll clean them up and move on to the turbos. Okay, we got everything cleaned up. Transmission cleaned up real nice. It's not all crusty and dirty anymore. Cleaned the inside of the bell housing too. Nice to get everything clean. Subframe, nice and shiny. There are a couple small rust spots on this. I'm gonna spray some paint on to prevent that. So everything's clean. So let's get started on taking the turbos off. This rear inlet is already gone, and we'll have to take the front one off, and obviously I took the outlets already. These are just V-band clamped on. Downpipes obviously already came off. I'm gonna start by removing this engine mount because this oil feed line runs underneath it. So we're gonna pull the engine mount off. It's an E16, there's 4 of them. And then basically it's removing the oil and coolant lines for both turbos, and then just basically pulling them from the headers. So let's get started taking turbos off, and we can finally put our upgraded turbos on. All right, well, here we have it. No more stock turbos on the N54. So that's kind of a pain in the butt, I'm not gonna lie. Stock turbos over there, giant puddle of coolant. Wound up having to take the thermostat out to get to this front turbo. There's a coolant line, 2 oil lines. I basically disconnected them from the block and left them on the turbo, and then pulled the rear turbo off. Front turbo, same thing, but the thermostat was in the way of me. Well, it was actually this coolant distribution pipe right here that was actually in the way. So pulled the thermostat, that's just 2 10 mils and 3 hose clamps, and we're replacing that anyway along with the water pump. Pulled the coolant pipe, it's just these 4 bolts, and then that also runs down into the thermostat. Got that out of the way, and then I was able to undo the front turbo just like I did the rear, and I actually pulled the exhaust studs out just to make room to pull the turbos out, along with all the seals and everything. You can replace some of the lines. Mine look like they're in good shape, and I know these turbos were replaced at the dealership not that long ago. We finally got them all off, making huge progress. So stock turbos are truly tiny, tiny, tiny turbos. Little Mitsubishi, I think they're TD03s. The other thing to mention, there's 2 small heat shields sitting right behind the hot side of the turbos. Those just come out to get lines out from behind them, so that's super easy. But everything's off, so now we can go ahead and I'm gonna clean up the block, get that all situated, pull the water pump, because it's right there, and it's like the best time to do it because you have easy access. And then we will transfer all of that to the new turbos and reverse it all and install everything. So for now, I'm gonna start just kind of cleaning the block up, make it look a little better, pull the rest of the exhaust gaskets out, and then we will move on to installing, or I'll go over, installing our new pure turbos. All right, you guys, we got the block pretty much all cleaned up. If you hear the birds chirping in the background, that's because birds decided to lay a nest up here, and I can't do anything about it right now, so we're just gonna have to ignore that. I'll make this quick. Block got cleaned up pretty good. This is all cleaned up, you know, most of the dirt and grimes off of it. There is one exhaust stud that is stuck, so I will have to get some easy out tool to remove that, but other than that, that's pretty much ready to go. My next step was going to be throwing the new turbos on, but first I want to flip this thing over and get the oil pan taken off, because I'd like to do that while there's nothing on the side, and it just seems like a good time to do it. So let's get this thing flipped over. Okay, you guys, we got the oil pan completely off the car. A lot of bolts to get that off, but pretty straightforward. Took some time, cleaned everything up, cleaned the pickup tube out, and cleaned the surface pretty much all the way around. And then I actually took some brake clean and blew the bolt holes out just to make sure there's nothing impeding the new bolts. And then we got our pan all clean, power washed it, brushed it, cleaned it up, made it look good, cleaned the mating surface on the other side. So everything is good to go back together. Whenever I've done it before, I'm not sure what happened. In the previous video, I kind of go a little deeper into replacing the oil pan gasket, but this is the old one. I don't know what happened, if it was a failure on this thing's part, if I didn't put it in right. Something happened that caused it to leak. So I don't know. Anyways, we're here replacing it. I do have the OEM BMW part. Whenever I'm replacing something major like this, I generally just like to go with OEM just so there's no question about it. OEM gasket, OEM bolt set. So basically all we need to do, throw the new gasket on, throw the oil pan on, and then put all, I don't know how many bolts there are, 32 I think. The other thing to take note, the torque specs for they are aluminum stretch bolts, so they have to be torqued to spec. It's 8 Newton meters plus 90 degrees for the shorter bolts, and then it's 8 Newton meters plus 180 degrees on the longer, bigger bolts. So that's pretty much it. Everything's cleaned up, ready to go. So I'm gonna get the gasket out of the packaging, we'll throw it on, and we'll get everything tightened, torqued, and we're good to go, and then we can throw the turbos on. Okay, you guys, we got everything pretty much buttoned up. Everything's torqued to spec on the oil pan. Everything's good to go. Put the front differential back on. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit more. And that's pretty much the bottom end covered up. Really hoping this one does not leak. I don't know what happened on the last one. Pretty much the same procedure I followed last time. Maybe it was torquing it, I don't really know. But this is torque to BMW spec, all BMW parts, everything was clean, so we should have no leaks on this thing at all. So now we're going to flip this thing over and start installing our new turbos. But here are the new Pure 600s. They do look relatively similar to the stock OEM Mitsubishi turbos. A few differences I noticed. This exhaust housing is a little bit bigger on the Pure. I believe the intake housing is the same size outside, but they do machine it out and put a bigger wheel on it. This is the front turbo. I kept the longer line on the front turbo just so I could differentiate. So pretty much the easiest thing we gotta do, we're just gonna take all of the coolant and oil lines off the factory turbo, clean them up, clean them out, and then we'll just bolt them onto the new Pures. And that's pretty much it, and they're ready to go on the motor. You can order new lines. These look like they're in good condition. I'm assuming they were replaced when the OEM turbos were replaced, so they look fine, never had any leaks or anything, but obviously we'll replace all the O-rings on the end and clean them up. So that's pretty much it. So let's just start by pulling lines off this, and then we're just gonna directly clean them and then put the new lines on the new turbos so I don't get anything confused. I did also get this liquid moly, it's like a turbocharger additive, presumably for startup because they don't have any oil in them already. So we'll put some of this in on top of putting our new lines on. So let's go ahead and get started swapping all these lines over. our turbos are ready to go on the car, finally. All the lines have been transferred. O-rings are all new on everything. Gasket on the oil drain. This turbo is ready to go. Coolant line's on. Gaskets replaced. You do have to, these come in the kit, but they're just exhaust gaskets. They're kind of an interesting design, but they just press into the back housing there. So we got both the exhaust gaskets on, and then that's pretty much it on the turbo side. So now that these are ready to go, we do have our additive in them, so they're good for their first startup. Everything's tight. Other than that, we're ready to go. So let's move over to the motor. We're gonna put all our new studs in, and then we can bolt everything back onto the block, and we're good to go. Okay, you guys, the turbos are in. They look pretty much the same as the stock ones. They're a little bigger on the exhaust housing, like I said, but other than that, they're pretty similar to OEM, but should be good for a little more horsepower. Everything went in okay, pretty straightforward, same as taking it off. The exhaust nuts, 14 foot-pounds on all of them, and then the studs are actually 7.4 is what I read. Be very careful trying to install the studs. I almost stripped one of them. They're very fine pointed, so they're a little tricky, but watch those on install. Exhaust nuts, got all the lines ran. Everything's tight. Don't forget these heat shields in the back, and then obviously the water neck needs to go on, so that's in. Coolant feeds are on, all the oil drains are on for both turbos. So we're pretty much good to go. Next step, I actually need to get the water pump back in. So we'll put a new water pump thermostat on, and then we can put our new upgraded outlets on, which we'll cover when we put them on. And then downpipes back on, and then we'll take it off the stand and put it back in the subframe, and then move on to the clutch. And we'll go from there. Okay, you guys, well, basically, we're just gonna catch up real quick. I was sick the past couple days, that's why I recorded stuff and wasn't speaking in it, but let's catch back up on basically what's been going on. Our turbo setup's looking very complete. Downpipes are back on. They are loose still because we'll probably have to adjust them to fit the exhaust. Everything's buttoned up here. Our VRSF inlets are back on. Obviously the filters are off right now. Basically this is all tied up, pretty much ready to go. Engine mounts back on. I did replace the seal for the oil pan right there for the axle. I'll have to do the other one on the differential side. As far as the front end of the motor, we got this all pretty cleaned up. Did the front main seal. One thing I added that I didn't have last time, according to BMW, you need to put sealant where the bed plate meets the block. So you have your bed plate, oil pan, block. Basically just put sealant. There's a little gap in the seal, so just put sealant in there. Kind of smeared it across, seal the bed plate up. So Front main seal should be good to go. The sealant is on, and then we just have to put the pulley back on, and this is all cleaned up. This is a good time to change your pulleys if you haven't, and definitely you want to upgrade to the aluminum power steering pump pulley because they break a lot, but these are all good to go, not replaced too long ago. If you haven't changed this flange, this is like the Mickey Mouse flange, good time to do that. Just get an aluminum one, the plastic ones break all the time. This one's from ECS Tuning. And then what we just filmed, we replaced the oil filter housing gasket. There's literally no better time to do it than now because you have to get the intake manifold off to get to this little E10 bolt here. So E10, 3 of them, one back here. 22 Newton meters on those, and then you'll see we actually went back to the factory oil filter housing. Main reason I did this, that VTT block off plate, I was just having a lot of issues with leaks. I do know these are leak prone, just way too many leaks, so we're gonna change the setup a little bit. I'm gonna run the factory oil filter housing, and then we'll get an adapter to -10AN so we can continue using our Mishimoto cooler. And then I will get an upgraded thermostat for this. Along with simplifying the whole oil cooler setup, I think this will be a little more leak free. And then we got our new filter in and a new oil pressure sensor switch, which came with our little kit from FCP Euro. So it's a really good time to do all your maintenance while you're in here. Last thing we really need to do is valve cover gasket, and then we'll just probably continue cleaning everything up. Good time to replace all your coolant hoses. These are relatively new coolant hoses, so I'm not gonna worry about it. So basically from here on out, just gonna clean some stuff up and we'll get it off the stand and back into the subframe. Okay, you guys, the memory card got full right there, so it kind of cut off. And this is kind of where we are. Coil packs have to come out. Disconnect all your wiring. There's 3 ground wires here. All 6 injectors get unplugged. Take the wiring harness off. You just have to disconnect your fuel lines. And then there's a bunch of bolts. I think they're E10s all the way around. And then you do actually take these posts out. It's 10 millimeter. Just get a deep socket, put it on there, you can get them out. So once you get everything undone, valve cover just comes off. These are a good idea to replace. They are plastic and they are prone to cracking because these engines get really hot. If you need to do injectors now, if you need to do coil packs, now is a good time to do all of that, any maintenance right here. Coil packs seem to be good. Valve covers seem to be good, so we just swapped the gasket. Before we completely put this back together, I'm gonna swap out spark plugs. So we'll pull them out. I have NGK 2-step colder plugs going in. One other thing I did do, replace the inner and outer tie rods. Just did them real quick, kind of off camera. These are super simple, especially with the rack out of the car. I would honestly recommend this if they haven't recently been replaced. So I just got OEM replacements. So let's get these plugs out and get new ones in, and we're good to go. Okay, we got everything buttoned up. All the wires are plugged in. As you see, it's pretty straightforward. Nothing really can move. Coils are in, injectors are plugged in, these groundings are plugged in. Don't forget those, your motor will not run. Ran the O2 sensors back over, plug those in. The only thing that we really need to do still is replace the vacuum lines. There's quite a few little ones here that I don't know if have ever been changed. There's these guys. And then there's pretty much these ones. Just get them changed now, do maintenance. Probably gonna have to order vacuum line. It's 3.5 millimeters, and the only thing I can find locally is 4 millimeter vacuum hose, which doesn't fit. Leave it to BMW, so probably have to order some vacuum line, but that's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty much plugged in. Seals are all done. The only thing left to do is we'll have to do the differential seal, which I'll do that when it's off the stand. So everything's pretty much back together, and now we're just gonna go ahead and take it off the stand and put it back in the subframe. All right, we got the engine off the engine stand finally. Back on the subframe. Wound up actually just doing the rear main seal because I wanted to knock it out. When you replace the rear main seal, you have to put sealant where the block meets the bed plate. I don't know why they designed it that way, but it is what it is. So I basically followed what my last mechanic that replaced this and did a clutch for me, basically followed what he did. We pulled the old main seal out, put a little RTV on the sides before we put the seal in, put the seal in, and then put more RTV on the sides just to kind of plug it up. They do sell a special kit from BMW. It's, I think, a $130 kit. I've talked to multiple people that work on these all the time, and they basically said this is all you need to do. I followed them because I trust them, so everything's good to go back here. Now we're gonna put in our twin disc. So this is a DKM Twin disc. I've heard a lot of good things about these. They're relatively inexpensive as far as twin discs go. They're about the same price for me to get a single plate spec stage 3. They handle, I think, 700 foot-pounds of torque, something like that. Comes with the release bearing for the twin disc. And then obviously Loctite, flywheel bolts, your alignment tool, and then the physical clutch itself. Let's pull this apart. Obviously the flywheel will have to go on first. So let me open this up and get it apart, and then we'll kind of look at it and put it on the cart. Okay, you guys, I think we're gonna end the video there. The clutch is in. So this is the DKM Twin disc, like I said. Really easy install like any other clutch. Their directions are very straightforward. Give you the torque value on everything, give you the Loctite. I mean, they give you everything in the kit. It's centered. It gives you a new center support bearing, which actually goes in the transmission output shaft. If I can. So that right there is it's a bunch of needle bearings on the inside. I don't know how I'm gonna get that out. It looks rusted in, so have to figure that one out. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this video. Got a bunch of maintenance done. Motor's basically ready to go back in the car. I have a few small things I'm gonna do off camera. Just gotta hook the power steering back up, run some coolant lines, do all that stuff. But the majority of everything is done. So, like I said, I'm gonna button up some things off camera. In the next video, we will get the engine in the car. I have a few more parts to put on, and then we'll finally get to start it up with the new turbos. So hopefully you guys found that video useful. If you have any questions on anything I did, please feel free to comment. I'll try and get back to whatever questions I can. That's about it. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, please. Helps the channel, helps me And I will see you guys on the next video where we will finally get this thing back in the car and up and running.